Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome you to a regularly scheduled meeting of the Ulysses Town Board. It is July 26, 2022, and it's 7 p.m. Could you do a roll call, please, Lisa?
Sure. Dodds.
Present?
Ms. Marino.
Present.
Ms. Olson.
Here.
Mr. Goldman.
Present.
Ms. Bouchard.
Present.
Full presence of the town board.
Wonderful, thank you. The agenda was posted on the town website on Friday. Are there any changes or alterations to it? Okay, then I will accept a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Yes, Michelle?
Do we have to add the?
No, because it's already an item on there. It's just a resolution, so it doesn't need a separate addition.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. My blurry hand. That is a hand. Okay, wonderful, thank you. Then moving on, I'd like to open the public hearing. Is there a motion to open the public hearing on a local law to prohibit the display of wild and/or exotic animals in a traveling animal act?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the public hearing is open. Are there any members of the public who wish to address us on this topic? If you don't want to talk about this topic, we do have a privilege of the floor. So just hold on if it's not wild animal ban related. But I see a hand. Yep, go ahead. Ms. Darfler, sorry.
Myself. Hi, I'm Marlene Darfler. I live at 18 El Dorado Drive in Trumansburg, and I'm a resident of the town of Ulysses and the village of Trumansburg. And I'm speaking this evening to register my support for the exotic animal law up for a vote. This draft was thoughtfully executed, exploring the issue from many angles and perspectives. It is protective of the rich livestock industry in the Finger Lakes, our agricultural fairs, and of such groups as Cayuga Nature Center, whose work in animal welfare and the education of the public to the needs and lives of the animal world around us can be continued unhampered. At the same time, this document created laws that are protective of the animals that are paraded around and shuffled from fair to fair throughout the county. Laws protecting animals in traveling shows are inadequate and poorly enforced. The Federal Animal Welfare Act establishes only minimum guidelines, and even these meager standards are often ignored. A growing number of local and state governments are filling the void left by insufficient federal oversight by passing stronger laws. Animals used in traveling shows live a life of domination, confinement, and often violent training practices, offering the public a distorted view of their true nature and the lives they live in freedom. By viewing caged, trained animals, people are not gaining any appreciation for their uniqueness or their dignity. Instead, they're viewing animals living under torture and torment, submitting to the practices of their trainers simply to entertain humans. There's no gain in appreciation for these animals, nor an understanding of their need to protect them and their environment. There's no educational benefit and no financial benefit. In Trumansburg, there is a segment of the population that would boycott an event that participates in the show of animal cruelty. For the other people attending an event that showcases these subjugated animals, most have come for the fair, the rides, and the food. Seeing the animals in captivity may be an attraction for them, but they're not spending more money while observing this act of cruelty. Sincerely, Marlene. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I forgot to say this, but you were fine. We do have a 3-minute limit
Right.
per person, but you were fine. I just wanted to make sure everybody else was aware because I got it going, but didn't tell you that. Okay, Colleen, would you like to go?
Yes, hello, my name is Colleen Boland and I'm a resident in T-Burg down on 25 West Main Street. And I'm coming in extemporaneously. So I would like to be able to have my comments reverted over to everything that Marlene just said. we're better than this in the village. The cruelty to have these animals come in and come out, do nothing for our children, do nothing for the community. It's a bad luck. We're more evolved than this. So I say, pass what it is. I did have an opportunity to read what you folks are putting forth, and I agree with it wholeheartedly. But I did want to say, one thing I want to go off of Marlene said, there are people in Trumansburg who would protest these things. I would be one of them. And I actually wouldn't want to spoil young kids' good times by seeing protesters there. So let's all do the right thing and pass it, and something we can be proud of in a tough time and era. Thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anybody else in the public who wishes to comment? You can wave your personal hand or, yeah. Okay, Mr. Reynolds, go ahead.
I'm Jerry Reynolds. You hear me? Okay.
Yes, sir.
I'm from the Trumansburg Fair, and you already know the Fair Board is against the exotic animal law. The law is written is for safety of the town of Ulysses and the welfare of the exotic animals. Well, I've been on the Trumansburg Fair Board for 60 years, and no one has ever been harmed by any animals. And there's a beautiful tiger down there in Florida. He would like to come to Trumansburg and show his beauty and his talents, but he will not be able to because he has to ride in a truck or a trailer according to this law. But his animal friends, his dogs and horses and whatnot, they can ride in a truck and trailer and come to the fair. This law will not benefit anybody in the town of Ulysses, but it will restrict some of the events at the Trumansburg Fair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there, I see another hand, Amy Morris?
Hi, I just wanted to make some brief comments. First of all, just off of what I heard Jerry say, I know you've been on the board 60 years, but I just want to say we've evolved over 60 years. Certain things that used to be seen as okay, we now know they're not. And I have 2 children. We have gone to the fair. We actually stopped because my children used to cry when they saw the tigers. It's not okay. I mean, these animals have like 7-mile to 20-mile territories in the wild. Everybody knows this isn't okay. My kids know it. They're 5 and 9, and they know it's not okay. I just would like to see Ulysses evolve, do the right thing. I mean, this is just not okay.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anybody else in the public who wishes to address us on this topic? I'm not seeing any hands. We'll give it a couple more asks. Is there anybody else in the public who'd like to address us on this topic? You can wave your hand, or you can raise a little hand icon, or otherwise interrupt me. Okay. Yes, Carissa.
Caitlin, I would just note that we did receive several comments today over the last few days that I shared with the board.
And those will be part of the public record. Is that correct, Carissa? Excellent.
That is correct.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, one last call. Is there anybody in the public who wishes to address us? Okay. No problem, Roxanne. We saw your message. I see your message. Roxanne is having some internet trouble, so she's going to rejoin. But seeing that no one else wishes to make a comment, I'll call for a motion to close the public hearing. Is there a
Move to
motion?
close.
Thank you. Is there a second? Harry? Wonderful. All in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you very much. We have closed the public hearing, and we will move on with the rest of our agenda. The next item on our agenda is privilege of the floor. We have 2 privilege of the floor opportunities coming up now, and then at the just before we adjourn tonight. So you're welcome to comment on any subject now, and you have another opportunity at the end of the meeting, if you'd prefer to wait then or comment again. Is there anybody in the public who wishes to address us on any topic? I'm not seeing any hands. Give it one more second, 2 more seconds. Okay. Well, it doesn't look like anybody wishes to address us prior to going into the rest of our meeting, but there, as I said, there is a second opportunity to address us at the end of the meeting. Okay, so moving on to old business, we are going to discuss, the town board is going to discuss the local law that we just held our public hearing on, the local law to prohibit the display of wild and or exotic animals in a traveling animal act. So I'm going to open it up to the board for discussion. Any thoughts on how you want to proceed tonight?
Yeah, I think, I think we've heard many comments. We've taken it. We've listened to everybody who's got a vested interest. Overwhelming support from the public comments to adopt the law. I think it's humane. It's inhumane not to adopt the law, so I'm happy to vote for it.
Anyone else have comments on the town board?
Did we look into Vivian Rose's comments about the special agricultural district?
Yes, the events at the agricultural district, I've responded to her questions to the best of my ability. They don't particularly pertain to this law in particular. The special agricultural zone allows for a variety of activities. It doesn't specify which animals are allowed there.
Did we check with Nate? Is it in conflict with it?
No, Nate's reviewed this. This was developed with him and his approval and his oversight. So there's no conflict in the allowance of this law, especially because, and most particularly because it doesn't impact any agricultural animals, which New York State would have a problem with potentially.
Well, she has it spelled out a little different, so that's what I was a little concerned with.
Well, the question in particular about whether or not, like, she refers to circus. So, but circus, and even in our law, doesn't spell out, I'm sorry, a circus in the agricultural zone, the special agricultural district that the fairgrounds is located in, doesn't spell out the animals allowed in it. And to further point, it's our understanding from the previous town board meeting that the circus that comes to Ulysses now doesn't have any wild or exotic animals in it anymore anyway. So,
which would render this moot.
no, it doesn't, because this isn't a law just about this particular space. This would be a townwide law. There any other additional, Mary, I just saw you come off mute.
Yeah, I just have a concern that, everybody who has provided comments on this, no one has actually seen mistreatment. It's all kind of third hand. So unless I'm missing something that someone else could enlighten me on. In all of these comments, it seems like mistreatment is more theoretical than actual.
I've had a number of conversations with different people on the subcommittee, and I think that, if I'm not trying to speak for them, but the argument is made that it's inhumane simply to keep an animal that has a large habitat by its very wild nature in a very confined space, that in and of itself can have the perception of cruelty. Whether or not the animal is being beaten or things like that, that's not, I don't think anybody has necessarily made any of those accusations. But the captivity component, the entertainment component of an animal I think that's been, there's a reason orca whales aren't at SeaWorld anymore. I mean, that's kind of the evolving thought for a lot of these animals too.
Putting a tiger in a truck and in a confined space and driving it, let's say from Florida to New York, which takes 24 to 36 hours, I think is inherently inhumane. I mean, that's cruel in my mind.
Roxanne, were you able to join us?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know about the video. I'll try that in a minute. I just want to be able to hear what everybody's saying.
Did you
But
have?
I've been
Sorry.
hearing, I heard all the comments at the public hearing, like some were chopped up, but I heard them basically.
Did you have any thoughts about the proposed draft?
No, other than I think it's been pretty well reviewed and commented on and revised by the committee that's worked on it. So I think we've exhausted any further amendments to it, and we should make a decision one way or the other.
Does any other board member have a comment before I call for a vote? Okay, is there a motion to approve the local law to prohibit the display of wild and/or exotic animals in a traveling animal act? Rich is moving it. Is there a second?
I'll second it so we can discuss.
Is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
No.
All those opposed? The motion carries 3-2. The local law is adopted. Okay. Well, thank you to everybody who participated in the process, who submitted comments, who worked on the draft. And we will move on. The next up is we are going to get an update from the subcommittee that has been working on or looking at our special event ordinance.
Yeah, so that's Michael and I, so I can speak for us. I sent a document like at a little after 6, so sorry about that, but I didn't get to speak with Nate until mid afternoon, and so I wanted to try to condense everything so the board could look at it in talking this through. So in doing a bunch of research, we had a long conversation. Michael comments he wasn't able to be there with Mark, our code enforcement officer, and then earlier today, as I said, with our attorney, to just ask some questions and get a further understanding, especially in light of the comments that we've received on this local law to date. And so there's a couple things. First, one of them is that the one question that I asked for clarification is that there's been some question as to whether this special event permit law applies to anything that happens at the state park, Taughannock State Park. And there was an FAQ thing that was older or earlier out, and it said, yes, it does, but it doesn't. I checked with Nate on that for certain. Mark also said it wasn't, but so it does not. So we, should make sure when we put out the final FAQs on this, that is understood. And so then another comment that we had was that some of the people in the agricultural community who commented were concerned that this proposed amendment would not allow, would be very constraining to agricultural tourism type special events that might happen on agricultural properties. And according to Mark, he has never seen a permit for anything on an agricultural event. And it has to either be 8 hours and 50 cars or camping and 50 cars. And so it seems that we just need to have some clarification on the wording that it really will not impact anyone in the agricultural community, but it would be worth being able to talk with some of them about it, just to clarify what sorts of events they think they might have that these amendments we're thinking about would impede. So looked into that a little, but have not had a chance to make appointments with any of those folks or any other folks besides Nate and Mark, because that was our code enforcement officer, because that was our starting point. So then beyond that, there was quite a bit of confusion about the changes to Part B. I mean, I don't know if you have that in front of you. I sent those along with the message for the board to look at, just so you can see the numbers, but I can't find it right now. Okay, anyway, sorry, I was just trying to find it and I got confused. So, okay, I got it now. So under the requirements, there was quite a bit of confusion about what it really says under B, which is no more than, well, the existing law says 4, but the proposed change says 1. A special event permit per calendar year will be issued for the same operator, the same property, and then any applicants. So there was confusion about that, the whole way that was worded. Some of the comments that we went through, people thought that was it. We were just limiting it to 1 special event a year, and that's not the case. And so I talked with Nate about some possible wording changes that we could make to clarify that, and I put that in the notes in the notes for discussion today that I sent. And so the other thing that's in there is oh wait, I guess I'll go back. I guess I'll just go through the special event permit, like down the line of things. So in section 142.2, where it talks about a special event permit being required. So B says that the special event permit shall be obtained at least 5 days before the commencement of the special event. So, and that is proposed to be changed to 30 days. So one thing that we learned from this most recent special event and that which required a mass gathering permit by the Department of Health. So we got a lot of updates on that because they were having concerns about issuing it, and they did not issue it, is that they don't issue. Liz Cameron of the health department told our supervisor that they wouldn't issue a permit 30 days in advance or even 5 days in advance, that they want to go out and inspect. And so, they would do it a day in advance or less. And so if that is the way this agency or other ones that have to give licenses or permits operate, which does make some sense if they want to inspect whether the requirements that they have that are put forward in a very extensive engineering document that does have to be submitted ahead of time to be reviewed. They want to wait and see if they're met. So, and Mark said this also, so we need to change that wording, because every event that requires, any level of permitting from the Department of Health or another organization and agency in addition to us who doesn't issue permits 30 days in advance or 5 days in advance, they'll always be in violation of our special permits law the way it's written now. So I suggested that, or Nate, and this would have to be, cleaned up legal wording, but something to the effect of a special event permit is filed, the application is filed at least 30 days before commencement of the special event. And and I have an addition onto that, but I'll get to that later because it relates to something a little farther down. But anyway, that we need to specify that because it's not the same. And so then under requirements, let's see, yeah, under requirements, which is the next thing, the special event shall not be more than 5 days in duration is the same. No more than 4 special events permits per calendar year shall be issued. And it's currently suggested 1. I would suggest 2 instead of 1, but you know, it's something for the board to talk about what number they want there. But another thing that we received a lot, well, some significant comment on was the next part, which is that any applications for special events permits in excess of this limit must be made to the town board. And so there was concern that, you know, we were taking a person who's not elected and not influenced by politics or feelings about particular applicants, as some thought the board might be, out of it and taking that over. And there was concern about that. And so one option the board could consider in response to those comments, beyond leaving it the way the draft is now, is we could keep the town board as the body that reviews or denies permits in excess of the allowed number under the CEO's jurisdiction, but we could specify something like with planning board review and recommendation to the town board, and the planning board do a review similar to a site plan review that they would do for applications within the zoning law. Another option is that we could do is authorize the BZA to review and apply and approve or deny special event permit applications in excess of the allowed number instead of the town board. And the reasoning there would be they're a land use board, so they have experience reviewing issues, you know, with regard to activities not allowed in a specific zoning district, and not quite the way the planning board does with the actual site plan, lighting, noise, traffic issues, parking, but with regard to impact on the neighboring area. And I mean, they would think about those other things too, but so those are options I'm just putting out there for the board to consider in response to that concern. Then E, under requirements, E right now reads, if the special event will include overnight camping, the operator will obtain all necessary approvals from the health department prior to applying for the special event permit from the town of Ulysses. So as I said earlier, they're not going to get those approvals the way the timeline of the health department works with these kind of permits. We wouldn't get it before applying to get this one. That it just wouldn't work. So we have to amend our timeline so that they fit. And so when I was speaking with Nate about this and some other things, you know, he pointed out that sometimes camping permits under the sanitary code from the health department, such as for the camping, aren't the only kind of permits that would be, or licenses or something that might be required for a special event. There could be beverage control licenses or other things needed. And so we could change that wording to something more broad. And again, you know, Nate would have to review it, but something like it shall be a condition of any special events permit that copies of all permits issued, permits, licenses, whatever, you know, the wording would be issued by appropriate governing authorities shall be provided to the code enforcement officer within some number of time. You know, Nate threw out like 12 hours of their issuance. And, you know, we could check with particular agencies like the DOH or other ones that might issue these kind of licenses or permits and see, you know, what based on their way of operating and timelines makes sense. But that would allow for things that don't come in until very shortly before it to be consistent with what we have written in the law. So there's that aspect of the the whole timeline thing that we have to look at and talk about. And then under 142.4, so procedure, under B, every application for a special permit shall be accompanied by the following. And then there's an application that the town has right now. And Mark and I had talked about his feeling. Then he says he's been, sort of keeping notes on this, that it would be a good idea for us to, expand that application to ask for more information than is currently asked for. And we wouldn't put that in the law, but he would work on that. And he was really advocating that we do that. And that would help, because then we'd have more information about what might be happening and what other sorts of concerns there might be. Everything might not be a huge thing that requires a mass gathering permit by the health department, but there would still be potentially traffic issues or parking issues or, firework lighting issues, who knows? So that would help with that, because the code enforcement officer would get more information on the application. And then a suggestion would be, which goes to what I was talking about before, that Nate had, and we'd have to get the right wording, but every applicant shall adding as like maybe a number 4 there, every applicant shall identify in the application any and all county, state, whatever, licenses, permits, other sorts of things. Nate would have the wording that require approval to conduct the event as proposed. So that's really specifying that the town needs to get all those things. And earlier on, we would specify when we had to have them by. And then the last thing that Nate, and I chatted about a bit, that was brought up by some comments, which is, what happens if the special permit is is not adhered to, and there's a violation. And so right now, what we have is the failure to comply with the requirements constitutes a violation and would be punishable by a fine of $1,000 for the first violation and $2,000 for every subsequent violation. Each day of failure to comply with the requirements is a separate violation. So, one thought would be to change, the penalty structure, and you could increase the fines in increments based on the number of violations. So it's just not a linear one to deter, continued multiple violations. I mean, the whole goal of this law is public health and safety, right? So you want to deter multiple violations. And then the other thing that he had suggested was that we could consider different levels of fines for the size of the event, with the reasoning being that there's a lot more work to do for the public safety inspections and all, and there's more risk to more people if the requirements aren't met, if it's a depending on the size of the event. And so the Department of Health has thresholds. Mark was explaining to me, and Nate thought this was one reasonable thing that could be considered if the board wanted to think about doing this. The Department of Health has thresholds for gatherings by the number of people expected, and different things are required depending on the size of the gathering. So if you did want to do something about having different levels of fines for different sizes of events, we could potentially use the DOH thresholds as a guideline. So I'm not advocating strongly any of this. I'm just, putting out what we've learned, how it in researching and looking into the details of what appeared to be problems with our current law and the comments that we got from the public. So if anybody has questions or whatever, that's what I have from Michael and I.
Yeah, so the other part that would be helpful for me as we're going through this is an update from this year's festival. Because it sounds like the permit was never granted. And then as Roxanne was laying out the penalties, what the town's stomach for actually enforcing anything would be, and whether or not we would be willing to do that. So that will guide us as to what we put in the law, or propose anyway. to put forth.
I can give you an update. So, to the best of my understanding, Grassroots did receive their mass gathering permit, but the state severed the campground from the mass gathering permit. So the activities that happened at the fairgrounds were permitted, but the campground never achieved designation under a permit by the health department. So in a kind of a nutshell, the way it works is that the mass gathering permit is in excess of 5,000 people. And mass gathering permits are based on event, not based on parcels. So most of what the health department does and what we do for permitting is based on the parcel. So it was a situation where the health department it's a state permit, but the health department is the environmental health department is the agency that executes and recommends and does all the work to determine whether or not a permit should be issued. And then they make a recommendation to the state on whether or not the criteria for the mass gathering permit has been met. And so the festival had already started, and I don't know the exact time. I was not informed by the health department directly of when the mass gathering permit was issued. It was after the start of the permit or start of the event, but it ultimately was issued. So I haven't seen a copy of it. I don't know if it's a retroactive, or I don't know about. I can't speak to what was happening on the fairgrounds per se. But the severing of the campground meant that the campground coverage at the across the way property was not included as part of the mass gathering. So the state didn't authorize it. And the health department did not authorize a permit for a campground. And that's a permit that they would have needed separate from a mass gathering permit. They had to meet the criteria for campgrounds under environmental health. The way the law is currently written is that the code officer has discretion to issue permits, but our law is conditional upon the permits being issued if the health department regulations are met. As the health department regulations were never met, the town of Ulysses never issued a permit for a special event at the across the way property. And this was an issue over more than a week. So initially I can't tell you the date. I'm looking at the date quickly. I received word on the afternoon of July 15th that the health department had denied the campground permit for across the way for Culture Camp. The way the campground permit works is that the health department will issue it, and it's a month-long permit. So the property owner did not need separate permits for campgrounds for Culture Camp and for Grassroots. If it had been issued at the time for Culture Camp, it would have carried through the main festival. So I received word that it had been denied for Culture Camp because there were still outstanding issues that needed to be rectified. So camping was supposed to be moved to the approved sites on the fairground property. They did approve there are 100 campsites on the fairgrounds property for Culture Camp. So anybody who was camping there was under health department approval. But basically camping started, and slowly grew over the course of the next week plus, or just over a week, starting with the 17th was the Sunday. So so that's kind of where we are. So the town did not issue a special event permit because it did not meet the threshold of warranting one.
All right, so I have a few ID questions. So have we issued citations and started the process of the fines?
The process is in process. I mean, the event wrapped or, was still going as of yesterday in terms of camping. And Mark is working through that process. So it's not a quick, it's going to take, most likely it'll be a next week. It'll be finalized next week.
All right. So there's an inherent problem here because they're selling tickets months in advance without knowing whether they're going to get a permit or not. So people are going to show up and they paid for camping sites. And if in this case where the permit wasn't issued, they're still camping knowingly, and Grassroots is knowingly in violation, but the people coming to camp aren't. So they're kind of innocent bystanders of this whole process. And if you have to wait till the day before of the event to get a health department permit, there's no way, I don't see a solution to the problem except raising the fines dramatically so that it ensures the permit holder to actually get itself together and do what they have to do. Otherwise, the pain of the fine has to be commensurate with the problem.
So I would just to piggyback off, just to provide a little more context. The things that a campground needs to do to meet health department regulations is a very specific list, and it's not a secret list. So the health department issued a resolution and I don't, off the top of my head, I can't remember if it's September or October of last year. I believe it was on October, that outlined a timeline that the property owner was expected to comply with for the fulfillment of all of the things necessary to get them to the point of being able to run their festival and run the camping. And so from my reading of those documents and my office, the supervisor email actually is copied on all of those resolutions and notices. Almost all of them. Maybe there's some that slip by, but when the Board of Health issues a resolution, I get copied on it. And so I was reading through, and it's, there was a timeline that could have been followed, and so this was an avoidable situation, quite honestly, based on the timeline set forth. The things that I know of, and I don't know all of it, were things like they needed to have fire lanes, and they needed to be accessible fire lanes, and they needed to have campsites marked and numbered. That's really important. There were 800 campsites. You're talking about excess of probably more than 2,000 people potentially, since I bet most people are bringing a friend when they have a campsite. But I don't know. I don't know the final numbers, but those numbers I don't know occupancy numbers finalized, but those campsite numbers are important because if you're visiting a friend on their campsite and someone starts to have a medical emergency, you're going to want to call 911 and you want that emergency responder to find you. And so knowing where you're located, just from a pure public safety standpoint, is actually really important. There were, and I believe these issues got rectified. For a while, there were not sufficient porta potties and hand washing stations. The campgrounds have a very specific range of things that they need. So it really is not inconceivable that it could be planned out and executed with tickets sold in advance and still meet health department standards, water testing, things like that. The health department really does lay out very specifically what needs to happen. So for what that's worth, were there any other comments? Michael, Roxanne, Mary, did you have any question?
I'm not done yet.
I'm sorry.
So that would require a monitoring from the start. First of all, I think 800 campsites in that residential area is way, way overboard as to what the residents can tolerate. I had 800. And I think the board should have known ahead of time how many campsites actually were going to be put in across the way there. Can we limit that number of campsites in a local law or in a resolution?
I can't answer that question right now. I'm happy to look into it. It wouldn't be a well-established response on my part, but I can look into it.
Okay, so I think that's one question I have, and I think we need, and I just think we're kind of in a no-win situation here. But I do think we should raise the fines based on the size of the event, so that it actually has some impact on the if they're out of compliance. Because the amount of fines we have are minuscule compared to the revenue that the thing brings in, and really has no effect on the entity. I think. I don't know. What does anyone else think?
So I'm curious, this, it was a life safety situation. And it's like a game of brinksmanship. So as we propose something, are we willing to do anything? Right? I mean, this would have been big news. And then if you do, then how do you do it? With 2,000 people and a handful of police or
Right.
whatever.
I think you could also get an injunction to stop it. But then you're penalizing all these people who in good faith came and paid money for their campsites. It's, we're really penalizing them, which I don't feel good about either.
So I would
But
say,
I'm
sorry.
willing to. Oh, go ahead, Caitlin.
No, I was just
Go
going to say that there were, so even though it was not approved by either the health department or the town, it's important that the board and the public understand that we had the town and we had people from the county who were monitoring that property. And so I believe the number is somewhere around 80 cars got towed. And I don't think necessarily they were all off that property, but I do know that they were reporting that it was getting reported in that when cars were blocking fire lanes, that they were getting pulled out. And because, the responsibility for public safety doesn't terminate just because a property owner doesn't have the necessary permits. And so we were both entities were doing everything in our power to make sure things were as safe as possible the entire time. So even though the permit wasn't there, due diligence was being done to the best of our ability. We can't physically go and number all the sites, but you can try and keep the fire lanes open in the event of emergency. And first responders were still responsive to that site, even though it was known that they didn't have a permit for it. So.
All right. That I applaud all that. And that's what responsible agencies would do no matter what. To take care of them and under their jurisdiction to make sure that they were safe. I get that. But that doesn't absolve the owner, the event maker from what they, from their irresponsibility of not getting it together.
I wasn't disagreeing with you. I just wanted to assure the public that we hadn't abandoned our responsibility in the absence of a permit.
Right. For sure.
So the other thing that Roxanne and I discussed was, and I remembered this Caitlin, when you said there were timelines or milestones that the health department had and that I wasn't aware of. So since this is, an unusual event, I mean, granted, you've been doing it for whatever, 30 years or something, or 25 years, it ought to be getting better. And this was clearly not better. So if there are timelines, I don't know, should we appoint a liaison, to the entity so that we work towards this rather than appearing to block it? Because I don't think any of us are against it. We just want it to run smoothly and safely. In this case, I mean, fortunately, nothing happened. But if something had happened, if somebody had a heart attack or an overdose or something, then okay, it becomes litigious possibly. And if they, latch on to the fact that we didn't do what we were supposed to do, then, we could be a suable entity perhaps. So anyway, I'm going to propose it might not be in the special events, but propose a liaison to grassroots, so that these milestones are being met. And so if something about plug it does have to be pulled, it's pulled 30 days ahead and not the night before.
That's reasonable. My question, is everyone okay with 800 campsites on Falls Road? I mean, to me, it seems so excessive given the nature of the residential neighborhood.
Well, that's part of the special event permit. I mean, camping's not allowed. It's not zoned there, so it's,
Right.
yeah, it's part of the special event permit, but that, maybe, as a liaison, somebody, they could have a permanent map made up and said, this is our camping layout, and these are where the roads are. So it becomes easier for, I see Eric's on there, but to, we know what the layout's going to be every time this comes up.
I had another question. Given that camping isn't allowed, how does the special permit override the zoning? Doesn't the
That's-
zoning, doesn't it
That's the
have to
whole
be?
purpose. Yeah, that's the whole purpose of the special event permit is to provide exceptions to the zoning. So if something is legal by zoning, you don't have to get a special event permit, even if it's going to last more than 8 hours and have more than 50 cars. So like Grassroots Festival doesn't need a special event permit. It's at the fairgrounds, and
Right.
those are perfectly allowable activities. The whole point really of the special event permit is a temporary safety valve on the existing zoning to allow unusual things to happen with some degree of frequency. So
Or you could also say infrequently.
well, it depends on how many you approve.
Yeah.
Four approved for covering 20 days. It might feel frequent if you live nearby them, if it's in a condensed area, but I think it's supposed to be infrequent. It's supposed to be unusual.
So if the special event permit wasn't approved, needed for the fairgrounds, then why, Mark walks through, I know Tom used to walk through and, inspect the stage and whatnot for safety.
Yep. So Mark is still responsible for buildings and structures under New York State. So he's doing the required structural safety checks and reviews.
Yeah, but why would he do that? He wouldn't just walk in there. He would need a permit. He would need some document by which he's going to check those out.
Yeah. So as code officer, he is our agent who enforces New York State building code.
I
So
get
he
that,
actually,
but what's
he has
the
a badge.
document that causes him to walk in there?
He has a badge that allows him to inspect. He's empowered by New York State as our representative. Yep, Carissa?
Is it not like a special event operating permit?
No.
Okay.
Nope. They do have to submit activities at the fairgrounds if they're going to have the large tents and things like that. Do have to submit information about that, but it's not a special event. It's just information so those inspections can happen. So when the circus came, he inspected the tent there. The structural tents have to be inspected. He has to inspect stages and things like that. So that's in compliance with New York State. Yeah, Roxanne.
I don't know if what Michael is referring to with regard to documents that he's comparing against, but for the mass gathering permit anyway, which that the fairgrounds must be under, because it's 5,000 people or more, there's really extensive requirements of an engineering documentation that have to be submitted. And when I spoke with Mark, he showed it to me for all of them, the campground and all, and there's maps and there's a lot of information that the health department requires be submitted by an engineer. So there's all that in terms of what's happening there and what needs to be there. So I don't know if that's what you meant, Michael, by a document that he's looking at, but in addition to the other, state codes that don't have to do with that, the building codes, there's a lot that's part of the sanitary code law for mass gatherings.
And even for smaller ones like the
Right.
circus, which doesn't
Right,
trigger.
that's the thresholds that they were talking about. The
Yeah.
DOH has different thresholds for the stuff they have jurisdiction over.
Yeah.
It seems like this is, kind of, I don't know how to, I guess we should decide how we're going to proceed with regard to the special permits law, because it seems like it's very caught in the specific discussion of grassroots and what did or did not happen this year. And I mean, that certainly is informing some of the problems with the current law that we have, but I think we have to just consider it that it's applicable to the whole town and not just the grassroots event.
We did issue a special event permit that was not connected to grassroots officially. But there was a campsite or campground that did, meet health code, health department regulations for a campground, and we did issue a permit, a special event permit.
So we do have other problems as I tried to raise in the things that I said and I wrote and sent to you, regardless of if it is a mass gathering or something the size of what grassroots proposes for a special event permit at across the way, or also I think we really need to look at this law and revise it because there's some inconsistencies and problems. And I don't know how we separate those two, but it seems like maybe we need to, because we're just very caught up in what to do about what happened with grassroots.
Yeah, Mary.
Well, I just want to say that I appreciate the work that Roxanne and Michael did, identifying specific issues in the current law. And I just want to say that I like the idea of having either BZA and planning board, or maybe both, review applications in excess of whatever number we eventually decide, because I think that the more input we have into the impact that a special event would have, really would inform our own decision on whether to grant the application or not. So I like that, and I also especially like the penalty structure being pegged to the size of the event. It seems to make sense to do that, and using DOH thresholds would be reasonable, I think. So those are just my thoughts about the revisions.
I'd personally be fine with review by planning in particular. I think would be the one, because I think it's a site for that kind of site. I think 800 campsites, at that point, it really does become a site plan issue. And I think that's where some of the devil is in the details. I do think, though, the town board should have to own whatever the excess number is. I think that should be the town board's decision, because we were elected, not appointed, to represent the town. And it puts us in a different position to be held accountable on actually making the difficult decision, or what could be a difficult decision. And maybe it wouldn't be a difficult decision. It's, I think it all depends on how many permits the board wants to leave to the discretion of the code officer. If you leave it at 2, you might never see more than that. The town board may never see it. And it also wouldn't probably at that point go to planning board or BZA necessarily if it truly is at the discretion of the code officer. So I think that all has to be balanced of what level. I personally think that it shouldn't be a 1 or 2. I think it should be the size. I'm much more comfortable with the code officer having discretion over small, what I would perceive as small events. I think 50 cars for 8 hours is not a particularly large event, especially if it's happening with, it's happening irregularly. I think where it gets much more complicated and much more sensitive, with much more significant potential impacts to the surrounding neighborhood, is when the size gets bigger and bigger. And so that might be the threshold to consider who gets to have discretion.
I agree with that, Caitlin. And I think for a bigger event, there shouldn't be the town board should be responsible for it and the code officer should not. So I agree with that. And I don't think the code officer for a thing of size as big as Grassroots, we should, on the first hit, we should be responsible and take the heat or whatever and represent the community. And enforce those fines. Because this really is a breach that they did the whole thing without a permit. I mean, that just doesn't fly. And if we're going to be any kind of body of representing the town, we need to be responsible. That's how I feel.
For me, I would benefit from seeing a new draft, a revised draft. I think, even if it's not, obviously it won't be a finalized draft. I think that would be easier to digest. I appreciate how much work you've done. So thank you very much. Having taken the first stab at it myself, I know that it's not a small amount of work to start thinking through all those issues. Is there any other comment board members want to make for that draft? We could look at it. The draft could actually be written of this or this or this potentially, and allow kind of some differentiation. Yes, Roxanne.
Well, do you want me to try to put it in what I did into the draft? Do you want someone else to do that? Like, how do you want to do that?
Yeah, if you want to insert your comments, I think that would be really helpful, just to even just the comments you've already made. I did review the materials you provided. I think it's seeing what that looks like kind of in real time in the document. If you have time to do that would be helpful. If not, let me know and we can figure something else out. I think it'd be good to then send that to Nate to see if there's any, he might notice, well, if you do this and there's a conflict here type of thing.
Right. Yeah.
But I think having a working draft to continue moving forward with, because I'm here to tell you, we were in this conversation last year. I don't want to be in this conversation next year. I'd like to be having a new conversation with working through whatever issues, whatever the revised draft was, if that's where we are. But this is, in my mind, this has been going on a while, and I want to move forward in a positive direction.
So what I was hearing from this discussion is, in addition to the either ors that I had already laid out, we should add one that it's not a trigger on a number, but the size. So the town board would always decide on a permit application going forward for an event of a certain size. So what is that size that you want to put in as an option?
1,000 people?
How many?
1,000?
1,000?
Or 500.
I don't want to weigh in on a wedding. I don't want to weigh in
You
on
don't
that.
want to
I don't want to
follow the
weigh
health
in an
department
8-hour
rules.
wedding. Sorry, go ahead, Michael.
We should follow what the health department's rules are.
But there's different cutoffs. So I could look that up and you can decide. I'll give some information along with it.
Well, I know there's a differentiation between, I don't know if it's 500. I know that 2,000 triggers a different level of review, because we were
Right.
on a potential event. 2,000 triggers much higher level, and then 5,000 is, I believe, the next leap. But I don't know
Yeah,
below 2,000.
I think it was like 1 to 499 and then 500 to 2,000. I'm not positive, but I think it was that, something like that.
Yeah.
Are people comfortable with 800 campsites? Or is that something that's fine with everybody? Should we look to limit that?
I don't know how big the site is. Isn't there like 90 acres there?
Yeah, but I drove by and that's a lot of campsites, 800 campsites. And I'm just concerned about the neighborhood and the residential nature of the neighborhood. And all of a sudden, for 5 days, there's this massive influx of campers. I think I don't know.
Well, I think it's one of those things where I think we would have to develop, we shouldn't develop a yes or no on 800 sites, because I think it's particular to whatever piece of land it is. 800 sites on 1,000 acres would not feel crowded.
Well,
So-
800 sites on Agard Road where they own the land is zoned for camping. I don't have a problem with that.
Well, 80%, 85% of the town outside Village, you can have campgrounds as a legal use.
Right, but you can't. So that's exactly right.
Right. Well, we might want to think about a number of sites per acre, and I don't know what what's reasonable. That might be something to think about as a way to gauge it. I can tell you, at least for that property, there's maps. They have a very defined layout that I wasn't around prior to last year, so I can't speak to it on previous years, but it is a defined layout that they continued from last year. So those maps do exist.
Well, 10 campsites per acre does not sound like you're cramming them in, you know.
No.
I don't really know for sure, but you know, an acre is, you could fit a lot of camping on that much land.
My problem is it isn't zoned for it, and they own land that is zoned for it. So it makes no sense to me. It just boggles my mind.
Well, I think, Roxanne, do you feel like you have enough feedback, at least for now? I know this is not a conversation that's over, but to at least start.
Yeah, it seems like there's some thought that we should add a whole lot about camping in our special events permit, unless we put it somewhere else, camping specifically. So, I mean, because some special events aren't even camping, so we'd have to expand this law to include all these camping parameters and all. So I think that, you know, that certainly is something the board can think about.
For that, it probably would be helpful to, and I have not personally done it, but look into the regulations on camping from the health department, because they actually
Right.
give specifications of setbacks and things like that.
Right. I haven't either, but maybe Mark, you know, could help us some with that.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, wonderful. Then I think that we have some direction. And this obviously will not be the last conversation. But we'll continue to make sure the public is aware when it's going to be back on the agenda, I would imagine, in not a particularly long amount of time. Okay. Then let's move forward with a discussion of our budget retreat. Michelle is here, and she was just going to kind of, I believe she's doing a screen share, just to kind of go over the layout of our budget retreat. It'll be on August 2nd at 8 a.m. Michelle,
Hello,
do you
everybody.
want to? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So I wanted to make sure that I had some time to prepare any data that's requested by the board. As everybody knows, we have limited reporting capabilities in our financial software. So getting an idea of the angles that you'd like to take a look at the budget development context, it would be very helpful for me to know ahead of time. So, and just any sort of other preparation that would be required. But the most time consuming piece of it is gathering numbers and doing any sort of analysis. So, you know, we talked about this at the finance committee, and I know that it might be that you think of something maybe tomorrow or the next day. So feel free to contact me this week. I will be planning on doing any sort of preparation in anticipation of the retreat on Tuesday at 8 a.m. before the weekend. So you'll get a packet of information by the end of the day. Friday is my plan. So it might come on the weekend depending on how this grant submission goes. So, so the big things that I want to talk about tonight, just to get an idea of if there's any specific data requests, are in the context setting portion of this list. So taking a look at our salaries for next year and all the considerations around that. The comptroller has put out a statement saying that basically the state budget reflects a lot of caution with the impending recession that everybody is anticipating. We have an updated taxable assessed value for the town. And I'm not sure we're going to have the tax cap information yet, but we'll have some information about, the simple calculation I will do is if we had the same tax levy as this current budget year with our new TAV, what would the tax rate be? So a couple simple ways of looking at things like that. We definitely want to talk about our work plan for 2023, which is guided by our budget creation process. So talking about some big projects coming up for 2023. I don't think we'll have retirement numbers yet. As far as contribution rates, I'll have to double check on that. But we do have some other numbers about health insurance projections and all of that. We're going to get into our sales tax estimation process, mortgage tax estimation process. I'd like to have a first draft of all the capital plans available for you for the retreat. That's my goal anyway. And, capital plans inform our reserve funding. So we'll take a look at reserves also. And then our community organization funding process. So yeah, those are the big highlights as far as what we're going to dig into for the retreat. So if anybody has any specific requests about data, either now or as the week goes along, I'll be able to hopefully get together any numbers that you want to see specifically.
Did the board have any requests now that they're aware of?
I would, if you just a general overview of, say, fund by fund and perhaps department, if there's anything big coming up.
Sure.
And then I think it would be helpful to do it'd only take a couple of minutes, but a budget narrative review of, say, the last 2 years.
Okay.
Maybe send those out so that we can see in the fall prior what we thought we were going to do. And if we're still on track for those. And I wouldn't spend a whole lot of time doing sales tax or mortgage because, we've had a good embarrassment of riches with mortgages and we all know they're going to drop off. And it's not really that big of a number. So, don't spend 4 hours putting that together. And the same thing with the sales tax. I mean, history repeats itself and it's going to keep repeating itself. So, for this, I wouldn't, I think we all know what the sales tax range is. So I don't need to see again, I don't want you to spend, 4 hours or even 2 hours putting a sales tax analysis together. So just a broad overview of departments. If some fund, or like, I wouldn't want to see any more surprises in the highway fund. I'd like to see a 5-year plan, and then hopefully we can stay closer to that.
Well, Michael, the only thing about the sales tax, the way we calculate it, we so underestimate it. It doesn't flow well into the budget because we're so underestimating the sales tax. So I'd like to find a way where we can actually better project the sales tax than we've been doing.
And that's an example of a number that we have a spreadsheet that's already set up for analysis of sales tax. So that is not a time consuming thing to take a look at.
Yes, Roxanne.
I was just wondering about, we've had some unusual years with COVID and all, and you can try to calculate what it's going to be and make assumptions, but you could do that if it doesn't take too long. But another thing I was thinking about that we must have the data pretty easily accessible is you could just make a graph of what the sales tax has been each year, whatever over the last, whatever you want, 8 years, 10 years, 5 years, you could see the pattern. And, if there's anomalies or just like what kind of a trend it's usually on, and you could do the same thing for the mortgage tax. we could just see what the longer term trends have been that we're making educated guesstimates against.
So I talked to the supervisor, and we can talk about this more at the budget retreat, but I can tell you that across the board, the Tompkins County Town Supervisors are estimating low on mortgage. And if we get more, then it's great, but the estimates coming into 2023 are not good. And we've seen the housing market and the inventory shrink tremendously, and nobody's refinancing their house if they can get away with it right now. So I can tell you on that, it's kind of like, if it turns out to be great with mortgage tax, but there's not aside from looking at trends, there's no recommendations from anybody at the town, county, or AOT or comptroller about how to make projections on it. It's just one of those things that is so temperamental and so dependent on where you live. So,
right. So, but I mean, I don't know, maybe it's just my background way of dealing with data, but I just think maybe looking at the trends would be a helpful thing. So, I mean, we could say, okay, let's cut the mortgage tax in half because to be safe, or, you know, by 3/4 to be safe and play in the budget, but we could at least look at the sales, how the trend has gone. So maybe it's more variable than we think. Maybe it's not. So, I mean, I don't think it's probably a hard thing to do if you have the numbers, which probably do from past budgets. So anyway, that's my only suggestion with regard to materials to put things in a big picture context.
great. Mary, Rich, did you have any additional? I know you've already seen a draft of this, but did you have anything else you wanted to, data you wanted to request in advance?
No, I'm good.
I'm good.
Well, I think you're both good, so that's wonderful. Thank you. Great, Michelle, thank you so much.
Thanks, Michelle.
And Michelle's not going anywhere yet because she's still got a couple quick items on the agenda. So we don't get to say goodbye to her. But thank you for that. The next up is an update on the CFA it's our comprehensive plan application that we're applying for money through the DEC to do the comp plan update. Earlier this evening, and I do apologize for the timing, I was aware that there was a potential that this might happen. And it's simply that, you know, Michelle has been fine tuning our application. Michelle, do you have a version of the resolution that you can share, or do you want?
I do, and I realized that I had made an inaccurate statement in my email, which is that there was another portion of this resolution that had to be changed, which is of course the matching funds.
Okay, great.
So
So the rationale, so this is the same resolution that we've previously passed with 2 alterations in the amount of money. And previously we approved this resolution for an application of $100,000. The application itself, you can request up to $200,000. We're requesting now with this resolution, it would be $110,000, 808. And the reason for this is not because we want to spend more cash out of the town, but in the fine tuning of the budget narrative, it was, you know, Michelle realized that we had not adequately accounted for the value of all the committees who would volunteer. So including planning board, their time hadn't been accounted for properly as an in-kind match. And neither had fringe benefits associated with staff who will be working on it. So those are things we would have to pay for anyway as part of using their time, or I mean, not pay for it for the committees, but there's value to the volunteer time, and so it should be adequately reflected. So that's where the alteration of $10,808 comes from in terms of the overall request. And the town has what was the original number? Was it 50,000? Was the original matching fund?
correct. Yep.
And so now the matching funds would be $55,404. So are there any questions about that?
Yeah, how do you account for that? So when you apply for your money, like I suppose at the end or during it, do you say that, you know, 4 people spent 20 hours last month or something?
Yeah, so there is a template that we have to use for the budget, but essentially it's the number of people on each committee and an estimation of time that that committee would be spending on the comprehensive plan update. And per DEC guidelines, we're using minimum wage for those volunteer hours. So essentially, if a committee has 7 people and we think they're going to spend an hour on the comprehensive plan for the duration of the project each month, so 7 committee members times $13.20 an hour times, we are saying that the duration of the project is 15 hours or 15 months rather. So it's just a simple multiplication based on what we're assuming the committee size will be.
Right, but when you're done and you apply for your money, you have to show, I mean, I realize you're estimating it now, but when you're actually applying for the money and say, I'm done,
Oh, I see.
what kind of documentation do you need?
I don't know the specifics on it, but I know that we will be submitting some sort of, probably something very similar to the budget template. I haven't seen the, the contract documents. When if the grant's awarded, we'll have those sort of details in it, but they don't provide information about what's needed. But it should be stated that there is hours accounted for grant administration that will go towards in-kind. So that sort of work required to submit that reimbursement documentation is accounted for.
Okay.
Roxanne, did you have I saw your hand up.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I was just going to say that I just realized that when we had the discussion at the last meeting and I, went through the projected time, when Michelle and I had been having meetings and we had to come up with the projected timeline and things that we wanted the board to, agree with, at least enough for us to put this grant in, that I had written that all out. And as part of that, I had written like estimates and thoughts of like all of these volunteer committees and how much time, over the timeline that would be reasonable. And I had said that I would send that to the board and I realized that I didn't. So I apologize, but I can send it still. But that's kind of what our brainstorming worked off of, like that we had all these volunteer committees that we could, that they specifically say in the application that in kind, they want to see that there's a lot of broad engagement from volunteers. So we're using the steering committee for the comp plan that would be formed, the water source water protection plan committee that will have that they'll work on it some, and then the planning board, the BZA, all those folks as volunteers. So anyway, my bad that I didn't end up sending that, sorry.
No problem. Thank you so much for all the work you did do on it. We appreciate it. Were there any other questions on this resolution or on the grant update? It's getting submitted to, it's going in tomorrow. Is that what's our tomorrow, day after tomorrow, right?
The deadline's Friday, but in order to avoid any technical glitches, I am going to try to submit it tomorrow. So.
Thank you. Appreciate all the time you made for it. It's not a small amount of work. So thank you very much, Michelle.
My pleasure.
Okay, if there's no further questions, I'll call for a motion to approve our application to the New York State Climate Smart Communities Grant Program for 2022.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries. And then Michelle, before you dash out, I thought it would probably be good. It was noticed in the vouchers that the vouchers felt thinner because there were not cemetery bridge stuff. And so I thought it would be great if you could just give us I already know this, but why don't you just, this was a project that you shepherded through. Would you mind just letting us, the board, know where we are in the process?
Sure. So we are in the process of the final closeout with DOT, who is going to take a lot longer than we would like. They owe us about $20,000 still, and the county owes us about $75,000. A reminder that we just acted as sponsor, and 100% of the local share goes to the county because they are the owners of the bridge and we just acted as the sponsors. And so we have the final invoice to the county. We can expect it in the fall at some point, hopefully before the end of the year. But in general, I had a conversation with the engineer at Tompkins County Highway yesterday. And in general, this project went quite flawlessly. There wasn't any huge issues. The timeline was matched. We were under budget, technically under budget. And so there was nothing but, friendly exchanges between us and the county. They were pleased with the way that the project unfolded. And I do think that we're going to have to wait a while. I've heard some horror stories about how long you have to wait to get that final reimbursement from the state, but we're not in absolute need of it. So yeah, that's the update. Everything went well for once.
Wonderful. Thank you. Anybody have any questions about it? Okay. Oh, yep. Carissa has a question.
Thank you, Michelle.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome. Oh, I should also just say quickly that the county did receive a Bridge New York grant for the Podunk, the steel deck bridge on Podunk Road, County Road 146, I believe it is. The construction for that is not slated until 2024 at this point. So if I hear different, you all will be the first to know. So.
Well, it's good to know it's in the future.
Right. Yeah.
Away in the future.
Much needed.
Yes, it is. Good. Excellent. And we're not administering that, correct?
No, heck no.
Perfect.
No.
I assumed not because I hadn't dropped that had dropped on my plate. So
no.
I didn't hear you sobbing in your office.
Yeah, it is a very specific skill set. I hope to employ again at some point with another round of Bridge New York funding. We're going to continue to apply for, at least in the culvert category. So
we're going to do it, and we're going to turn one of those culverts into a bridge and hand it off to the county. So
that would be
the plan.
Yeah.
So we'll get there. Okay, awesome. Thanks, Michelle. I think we are done. So have a good evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Excellent. Well, I think that the next item on the agenda is a wonderful one, but it's actually mislabeled on the agenda as approval of the minutes, and there is an approval of the minutes, but I mislabeled the resolution. The resolution itself is accurate, which is, Carissa, did you want to share? This is really your news. This isn't my news at all.
I have hired a new deputy. Her name is Cassandra Beck. She has been in for a very brief training and to go over, to do necessary paperwork. But she will start officially on Monday the 1st at 20 hours a week. So that's very exciting. Hopefully you'll get to meet her or see her soon. She'll probably be at a board meeting, one of the next few.
Excellent. Well, then I'm going to move the resolution that the Ulysses Town Board approves a wage of $20 an hour for the newly appointed deputy clerk, Cassandra Beck. Is there a second?
Second.
Excellent. Any comment? Hearing none, I will call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
With our congratulations, Carissa. Excellent. Okay, now we are another quick item of new business. I wanted to so we typically now in December, we typically cancel our second meeting in December, but I wondered if the second meeting in November is falling 2 days before Thanksgiving. And I was going to propose, if it's amenable to the town board, would be potentially one of two things. I am personally planning on being on vacation that week. But certainly the town board can function without me at a meeting if you want to continue having your meeting on the 22nd. Since it's not a first meeting of the month where we do vouchers and things like that, I was going to propose seeing if the board was interested in moving the regular meeting to the 15th to cover any additional business needed to be handled that month. I didn't know if anybody else had any holiday related plans or desire to be out of town. You can certainly continue, the town board can certainly continue to have the meeting on the 22nd. And I will happily pass my invisible gavel to whoever ends up to probably Rich.
Rich?
So I'm passing the gavel back, and I think why don't we tentatively meet on the 15th if we need it and cancel it if we don't? And cancel the 22nd.
I would.
Or we
support
could have it on the
meeting
29th.
15th. Yeah. That's true.
Because that would be 2 weeks until the next meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah.
it's yeah.
Right.
The only challenge of that might be getting the agenda packet posted the day after Thanksgiving. It would have to be posted well in advance of that. That's not an impossibility. It's simply that we would have to lock down business probably realistically like the week of we could do it if that's what the board wants to do. We'd have to pretty much lock it down the 18th. So, but that's not an inconceivable thing. I wouldn't want to try and get a budget. I wouldn't want to get a packet done. I wouldn't be able to get a packet done on the Friday after Thanksgiving. So, but we can do the 29th. What's the feeling?
Keep it to critical business. You know,
And have it on the 29th?
yeah, just whatever business we thought we had to get done and keep it to that,
Well,
And if there isn't any, we could cancel it.
right?
yeah.
We can do that. We can see, how about I usually have, the agenda isn't made on a whim. So I usually have a pretty good sense of what's coming up. So we probably have a fairly good sense of the first meeting in November if we're going to have anything time sensitive that we need to do. So.
But we can add things to the agenda too. I mean, even if it's not out in advance, right?
Yeah.
If there's something that comes up that we feel like is important to talk about.
No, absolutely.
And
No.
and you can post the extra materials, that week or whenever, right before it even, so they're still available to the public. So if there's accompanying materials, if someone wants to raise something. So it seems like we have flexibility.
Okay, so do you want to then cancel the meeting for the 22nd and schedule it for the 29th? And then we'll hold it on the 29th if we need to. I mean, we can always, if we decide on the 16th, I'm sorry, the 15th, that we don't think we'll need a special meeting or another meeting, we can cancel it then. We can also, we have the ability to call special meetings also if needed.
Right. I'm sorry, I have a question, but I was just looking at my calendar and it's definitely November 2022. So November 1st is a Tuesday. So November 15th
Eighth.
would be the
Eighth.
second
No.
one.
No, November 8th.
November
I'm looking-
8th.
Right, 8th, and then, so now you're going to the 29th instead of the 22nd.
Yes,
Right?
because
Okay.
the 22nd, because they're
Right, okay.
fourth Thursday.
Not the 15th. I got confused, but I got.
Well,
it
I
now.
did,
Thank
I
you.
proposed initially having a meeting
Okay,
1 week after, but the 29th is fine with me too, if we want to reschedule it for then.
okay, thanks.
Will we not be meeting on December 27th?
Historically, that's been a canceled meeting due to generally low attendance of people.
Right. Well, the Friday is like before 23rd, right before Christmas Eve, and then it's right after the Christmas holiday observed. So
It's usually a quiet time in the town too, in terms of, I mean, we have to pay our bills, but it's not usually like, oh my God, we have a grant application due in 2 days, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Government takes a bit of a, follows I think what's going on in the public and checks out mentally in a lot of ways, not just, I don't mean at the town level, but just kind of in general. So I wasn't proposing canceling that meeting now. I think we can
Right.
cancel it in December. I think we just planning ahead, that's traditionally not a meeting we've held. In other years, we have called special meetings, you know, in the morning to take care of a couple quick things of business if necessary. But okay, so then thank you. I appreciate that feedback. Let's look at the 29th then of November for a tentative or for a scheduled meeting. We'll cancel the 22nd of November. And we can certainly have plenty of time to move forward if there need to be any alterations. So thank you very much. And moving on. We need to go into executive session. I need just the board for this. And it's related, there are two separate reasons to go into executive session. One relates to a specific employees or appointed person or persons with the town. And the second is for matters that may lead to litigation. So is there, and so I will tell the public too, that there is no intention of taking any action. We will come back and resume our regular meeting. Is there a motion to move an executive session?
Question from Caitlin?
Yeah.
Is,
So moved.
well, is Karen hanging on for privilege of the floor? Because there's not much on our agenda after this.
Oh, would you like to move, we can move privilege of the floor up. I'd be fine. Was the board okay with doing that?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Let's move privilege of the floor forward then. That's a good idea, Michael. Thank you. Yes, Linda.
Okay. Yeah, I'm glad you moved it forward. I wanted to make a comment about the campsites. Because last year we were at the planning board, we worked on Spruce Row expansion. And from that, I learned that there are quite a few guidelines around campsites. And even though 90 acres may sound like a lot of space, I think, you know, if there's wetlands or anything like that, that there's setbacks you should be sensitive to, that needs to be taken in consideration. So my thinking is at some level, since that property is always going to be used for campsites via special permit, whatever, that there really needs to be a site plan review to identify what the real capacity of the site is for campsites. And then you can put a restriction on the grassroots for how many campsites they can sell. Right? Because once you start getting fire, what we learned from the Spruce Row was once you get the fire roads in and all of that kind of stuff, it takes up a lot of space and really, you know, has an impact on the number of campsites you can have.
Good point, Linda.
Yeah, thank you. That's
Yeah.
good.
So just the point is that we have some knowledge and we know, you know, already within the planning board. So we should take advantage of it. I know the law doesn't really specify how you would do that. So that's going to take the creative piece of it.
Devil's always in those details, Linda.
Yeah, I know.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay.
Karen, did you have a comment?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for Richard for pointing that out. I appreciate that. I've just been kind of taking a few notes as I've been listening throughout this evening's meeting. And I'd like to kind of start with way back with Ms. Darfler in the beginning there. So you were talking about laws that she pointed out that sometimes there are laws already either in a town, county, or state that are sometimes ignored. And I feel like especially there the current laws that as a Falls Road resident and the lack of permits that just happened this last weekend, I feel like our public health laws were also ignored. So that is of great concern to me. We have some that are already on the books, and yet then what happened? Because I was like floored when I found out that we have laws and regulations in place, and I just feel like they flagrantly just kind of moved on because, well, as Richard said, like these unsuspecting people already came in and they paid for their ticket and they don't know that there's not a permit, but then what do you do? Because they're already there. But as you know, but I kind of feel like on the other half, I'm like, there's laws in place, and that's kind of like if I bought a ticket and these people don't have their stuff in place, and then the camping was shut down, I would probably doubt I would not buy a camping ticket there. I might go camp at Spruce Row or somewhere else that's a legit campsite instead of somebody that's not having a safe environment because they can't even get a health department permit. I don't think I'd want to be camping in a place like that either. As far as I'm going to try to talk fast because I got my 3 minutes. So as far as any future law or actions that need to be taken into account in light of this, you know, I've heard talk about, you know, people talking about the number of people or the length of the event. And then I'm not sure what this BCA is that you're talking about that maybe takes into account of, you know, neighborhood effects on people living around here. But I like that idea, and, you know, the number of people, the length of the event, but also the length of the neighborhood disruption, because I noticed this year that it seemed like what is normally going on the campsite, you know, slowly several weeks in advance, they're bringing in the porta potties and they're bringing in other structures. And it just seemed like that wasn't taking place until almost 5 days before the event. It just seems like the logistics that they need to have in place was very slow this year. Where I'm driving by, I'm driving up the road and I'm not seeing anything happening. And I'm like, I can't believe there's going to be an event of this size in just a few days, and I'm not seeing any action until very few days before the event. And the other thing is if we put in something that talks about like a law about talking about, well, what is the length of the neighborhood disruption? Then is that going to then entice them to start late like they did this year? But then we run into the permit issues. And the other thing is there was talk about fines possibly for not bringing through, I'm sorry, I can't speak in English right now, bringing through the, you know, if you're not following in through the fines and not completing what you need to have in place for the permits, whatnot, then, you know, the larger the event, the larger the fines or what kind of a thing. But what if they do, like they miss the mark this year and they miss the mark next year? Is there something in place that if you're just not going to have all of your ducks in a row for several years in a row, because this is a yearly event, does that affect the fines? If I'm just going to flagrantly violate the local laws numerous times in a row, is that something that could be, is there a chart in place here? Because I could just violate the law every year and pay it. And the other thing I wrote down was the whole thing is this is called a special event law. If somebody is hosting the same event every year over the same dates, at what point is this event no longer special? Do we now need to have a definition of what is a special event? A wedding, some sort of a reunion, something that's, you know, going to miss the, you know, require a special event permit, but not, for me, it's no longer special. It's a yearly annual sort of event it doesn't, but again, I don't make the definitions. And if they don't fall under the definition of special, Are there other requirements? Because even as Michael said earlier, that after 30 years of having this event, why are they missing the mark now? What is different, and should we be getting better at requiring or meeting these permit requirements than worse? And I don't know if anybody, I shared it with Richard. I think I tried to send it to you, and I tried to send it to Caitlin. Is there a requirement for setting off hot air balloons? Because I had one almost crash land in my yard Saturday night, and I seriously thought I couldn't figure out what the noise was. I stepped out on the deck. I pulled up my phone. I videotaped the whole thing, and I thought this hot air balloon was going to come right through the power lines that come through my back property. It was crazy and it was scary. So I don't know what that is, but it was not okay, and I didn't expect that. So I probably used up my 3 minutes. I'm sorry.
I let you go a bit longer. Thank you, Karen. So Karen, I did receive your file share. It was too close to the meeting for me to have a chance to review it tonight, but I will attempt to share it with the rest of the board. I don't know the answer to your question about, I'm not aware of anything in the zoning referring to hot air balloons. I do know those are governed at a higher level than us, the FAA.
So from my understanding from a neighbor, it took off from the parking near the campground, and it wasn't getting the height. It was more coming horizontal than it was vertical. And I do not know for the life of me how it managed to miss the lines that go through the back side of my yard, because the power lines kind of go kitty corner through my property, and it was just coming straight toward me. And the fact that it managed to pick up some height and miss those power lines was just absurd. I can't even and I'm thinking, I don't know, I wasn't expecting that. I don't know what the, if it's a residential neighborhood, there was a lot of people there. Isn't there supposed to be some sort of, space?
Yeah, that's not a question I can answer tonight, but I'm happy to look into it. I mean, it's certainly, I'm glad that nobody was injured in the process, and we appreciate you bringing it to our attention. So thank you very much for your comments tonight. We appreciate it. Both you and Linda. Thank you for staying for Privilege of the Floor.
Thank you.
Okay, then I think that now I accept a motion to go into executive session with just the board. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Mary? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Join your room, friends. Awesome. Excellent. The board just came out of executive session. We took no action, and we are returning to our regularly scheduled meeting. Upcoming events, just giving a rundown. We've got the board retreat next week on the 2nd at 8 a.m. And then we have our regular meetings, and then we're going to be closed for Labor Day. I don't have any additional announcements tonight. Is there any other board members who do? Okay. We can do the last resolution for us is approval of the minutes. Carissa posted the minutes.
Move to approve.
Well, I just have a question on that first. So it says the minutes from June 28th, regular, July 12th, public education, and July 12th, regular meeting, but I looked twice in my email and I don't think I missed it. We got the June 28th minutes, but didn't we already approve those? And
No,
I didn't.
because there were you had some suggestions, and Michael.
Oh, right. Okay. And I didn't
So I wanted to be able to amend them.
Okay. And I didn't get
Suggestions.
the July 12th regular meeting minutes in the email I got. I really.
Yeah, I don't think they were
that.
emailed. I just
Okay.
posted them on the website.
Okay, so we're not looking to approve
Just
those. It's
wait.
just the amended June 28th and the July 12th public information, right?
Yeah, I
Because
mean,
the
you-
resolution has July 12th in it also, but we didn't see those yet.
So
Is that
Chris
right?
was working on the minutes when I have to get her my packet by 12 and she was in the middle of doing some other stuff. And so she finished
Okay,
after I submitted my packet. So I was doing it based on what was anticipated. But if you'd like to hold the meeting, I'm fine holding the meeting minutes from the 12th. We can hold those to the next meeting. Is the board prepared to approve the meeting minutes from 6:28? Is there a motion to approve those?
so
Motion.
moved.
So many movers and shakers. I don't think Roxanne's moved much today. So Roxanne and then Rich hasn't seconded anything. So
Yeah, I second.
exactly. Now you get to. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And with that, we are at Rich's favorite time in the night.
Well, wait,
Move
don't
to
we need to,
adjourn.
Oh,
don't we approve the public information meeting minutes that we also have from July 12th?
July 12th?
Oh,
Yeah, we
I thought
have
we were
those.
I'm sorry. I thought we were holding everything. Okay.
Oh, okay, if you want to hold it up. I mean, I
No, no,
wasn't
no.
even trying to be critical. I didn't realize
No,
you
not at
should
all.
look also elsewhere if it doesn't come in the packet. I'm sorry.
No, that's, I apologize for not specifying that. We can hold the 12, do people feel comfortable moving the special education session meeting minutes?
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Move.
And second?
Second?
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
So we will hold the regular meeting minutes from the 12th to the next meeting, and then we will catch everything up then. Awesome.
Right.
Great. Rich, it's your turn.
Move to adjourn.
Second?
Good night, everybody. Thank you for your time tonight. Safe
Aye.
travel.
Good
Good night.
yeah.
Bye-bye.